Welcome to this Autism Ontario webinar. Successful Parents, Happy Families, 12 Strategies for Success. My name is Matthew Lay, and as always, I will be your host. Today, we are joined by one of our favorites here on the Autism Ontario desk, Dale Munro. He's an individual and family therapist and clinical affiliate at the Redpath Centre in London, Ontario. So we know that being a parent or a family member of an autistic child, teen, or adult, it can be highly stressful, and perfect parents and families do not exist, but some cope better than others. In Dale's counseling practice, successful parents have taught Dale 12 strategies, secrets really, for a happier and more fulfilling family life, with ideas from stress management and family therapy research, and keeping in mind the impact of COVID-19. This session will reveal and discuss those strategies, or as I like to call them, secrets. So with that out of the way, I want to formally welcome Dale to the desk. Dale, thanks for being here today.
It's really my pleasure to be here again. And I love talking to families of people, with autistic people, because they're the greatest families in the world. And I'm very fortunate that, as you know, Matt, I've been in the field 50 years now, and on June 1st. And I know people that were 8 when I first met them who are now 50 years old, autistic people, or some that were 18 when I met them that are now 60 years old. So, this is a real pleasure. And again, thank you everyone for being here today.
Well, 50 years is certainly a long time, Dale, and could make the joke that did you start when you were 13 or what's going on here, but that is a lot of experience. And as we promised, to help our audience today with the secrets, I do want to remind them that throughout the presentation they can submit their questions at any time using the Q&A box located right below me and Dale. And I will aspire to get those questions answered throughout the course of today's presentation. There are also a series of resources located in the handout section, and it's jam-packed today. Make sure you take a look at those and download them before you go. I'll be referencing a number of those. Resources as I go through this. And then finally, if you have any issues, questions, or concerns, click on the help button and someone will assist you. So Dale, we got a lot to get to. This is the COVID edition. And I know COVID has brought stress to a lot of our lives, but me and you had this conversation a couple years back. What's new or unique about these strategies as it relates to COVID-19 and what we're all going through?
Well, I think that what we're dealing with now is a lot more families that are dealing with economic problems because of people not being able to work. We're dealing with people, say in big cities, people that live in multi-generational families living together. We haven't given them much attention in the past, and I think we need to be much more sensitive about that now. And I think that, right now we're dealing with more mental health issues in families because of the isolation, which can bring on depression and sometimes behavior problems. School now it's been a real yo-yo in terms of families knowing if they can go to school or not, their kids can go to school. And so there's a whole bunch of things like this. And when people are isolated, they have more physical health problems too.
Really?
And so, the other thing I want to say is, probably the wildest thing about the COVID is the bad haircuts we get, and the number of times I want to thank my daughter-in-law for cutting my hair for today because it was looking kind of scary a while back. It's a really weird time, and it's a really tough time for people right now. And I don't want to, I never want for a moment to minimize that. And right. I think that, I think it's important that people understand that people are frightened today. And a lot of people are grieving the loss of the life they had a year or two ago. And so things are just a lot more complicated now than they have been in the past.
Well, I don't have the same concern around haircuts since mine's been the same for going on 20 years now. But maybe we can jump into the content, Dale, and talk about the other causes of distress that we have going on. I'll let you get into that.
For sure. I think that in general, the last few years, we've lived in a world where people have wanted perfectionism. You're supposed to be perfect parents. You're supposed to have the perfect job. You're supposed to have the perfect car and house and all this. And the pace of life in general has been very, very quick. And so that puts a lot of pressure on people. Work situations are much more stressful right now than they have been in the past. People working at home and they may not have a good place to work, and maybe they've lost their job or they've been cut back on hours, or they're working in a place where COVID may be, you may be afraid that you might be picking it up from your work setting. And, the pandemic has, has really affected people in a great lot of ways. And again, as I said earlier, which is not listed here, but school. The thing we have to do, though, when we're talking about, COVID-19 and stress within families, is to, keep in mind that our thinking can have a huge impact on everything else that's going on around us. And this is a simple cartoon that shows maybe, it's an old cliche, but we're doomed, Agnes. Our life raft is half full of water. And then Agnes says, don't be such a pessimistic. Don't be so pessimistic. Look at it being as only half empty. There are people that look at COVID as saying, this is a really tough time, but this is going to end. And I want to make it clear to everyone in the audience, as a person that studied history my whole life, this pandemic will end. There will be a different normal when we're done, but we will start to slowly get our life back. So even if they're, talking about vaccinations and everything right now, we're going to get through this. And so I want people to feel a sense of, stability even in the middle of these tough times. There are three ways that parents can cope. Three ways that parents try to cope. Some families use emotion and they get very emotional and they get, they panic easily. They catastrophize things that are around them. Other families are more problem oriented, and as the problem comes up day by day, they deal with those problems, and the next day they start over again and deal with those problems. And then there's a third way of doing things, people that are more accommodative, that roll with the punches. And the people that have the hardest time as parents are the ones that are really stuck on an emotional way of dealing with things. If you can handle things on a more day-to-day basis, problem-focused, and I think that I want people that are really emotional as parents to do one thing before they make any decision for their children on a day-to-day basis, and that is, I want you to take a deep breath. One more deep breath. And I want you to say to yourself, I need to be logical and I need to think in a rational way for my children. I can't let my emotions control this. And if you take a couple of deep breaths and try to be as incredibly logical as possible, you're going to cope better as a parent.
I know you're going to get into this as we move further into the strategies, but can you give me a very simple example of the difference between looking at things in an emotional way and the problem focused way, that number 2 item there?
I think that, family members that get really excited and start to, maybe get angry really easily and things like this, or they're just, they just feel like everybody's out to get them. Again, if you can think about things more logically and with breathing attached to it, you can start to realize that things aren't quite as bad as you think. I had a dad in my office, Matt, that had a 5-year-old son who had just gotten his diagnosis of autism. And he said, my son's never going to get married. He's never going to get a job. And I said, please stop for a minute. Try not to look more than 3 months into the future. Your son's 5-year-old. And I said, I know people, because I deal with adults with autism also, that are married, highly successful in their field. I know people that, hold very credible jobs, or at least they're working and raising a family, and they have a diagnosis of autism, but they also have a pretty full life. And I'm not saying every autistic person has those abilities, but a lot, at least half the people we deal with do have a lot of ability. And we must handle things in a more peaceful, logical way, with lots of deep breaths and some meditative breathing if you need that, or prayer, or whatever you need to kind of get you through that.
Perfect. So let's get on to what it looks like. What are the symptoms? What should we be looking for, I guess, in ourselves as parents?
When we're really under distress, we feel mentally and physically exhausted. We look, act, and seem depressed. And couples start to fight with each other. They start to get on edge with each other when they're under distress. And not only do the kids start to show behavior problems because of the distress within the family, but so do the parents start to show behavior problems. And so it's important that we work on both. A lot of the research is showing parents that do really great stress management for themselves can make really good decisions, and it can really help in terms of dealing with behavior and health needs within their children. And so, again, these are some of the symptoms of distress that people have. And I think that it's important for each one of you to decide, are you a racehorse that can work 90 miles an hour and do a million things? Or are you a turtle that likes to do things slow and easy? You've got to pick the pace that works for you. And I know in my life, I'm kind of a race turtle. And I'm kind of in the middle somewhere, where I like to keep busy and deal with things, but I also like to handle things as calmly as I can, because, it's important that parents deal with their own stress management, their own emotions, so that they can handle things a little more calmly. As a parent, I know, I never deal with everything calmly as a parent, and sometimes I've lost my temper and things like that. But try to deal with things in a more calm way. Speak more quietly, more slowly, more succinctly, and try to keep a positive frame of mind as much as possible. If your voice rises, your kids will show more behavior problems, and they won't listen. If you talk more quietly, you can even be firm, your kids are going to hear you more. And I think that's really important. Matt, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the life stages in parents that I see, And, when I deal with parents of little kids, the parents are absolutely frazzled, and family members, are really frazzled. And then what happens is, by the time those kids are teenagers, the parents are really frazzled and worried, and there's sexuality issues and school issues and work worries and all these kind of things. By the time the kids are in their 20s, the parents are often worried about the future, but they're starting to roll with the punches now. They're starting to, get an idea what their son or daughter can do or can't do. By the time the children, the autistic children in their 30s and their other children in their 30s, they're often, family members, parents are usually relatively happy, believe it or not. They're worried about the future, but they're doing quite well overall. And by the time the children, are in their 40s, often, parents are living in Florida unless there's a COVID-19, or their life has a certain peace to it. Their life has a certain, and I see this across the board, like most families, as your children get into your 20s and 30s and 40s, you'll find that they find their place in this world. And the parents can actually, believe it or not, relax a little more, and do relax a little bit more, because they realize that their child isn't doing too badly. And a lot of the behavior problems you see in teenagers, behavior problems statistically become less and less as people get into their 20s and 30s and 40s and things like that. I want to talk a little bit about the stress level with families, and I'm talking about families of young children and teenagers. And typical families, about 4% of the parents are depressed at any one time. If the child has an intellectual disability, it's about 8% of parents that are, suffering some real depression at any one time. And parents of autistic children, about 16% of them are really struggling at any one time. And some of the research that's been done has shown that the level of physiological stress within parents can be as high as soldiers returning from Afghanistan and active duty over there. So,
Wow.
And so it's really important that we keep that in mind into the future.
I've asked this a couple times on the desk of different specialists, and I don't think there's been any, up until this point anyways, any data that is complete or released about the impact of COVID-19 as it relates to some of these data sets. But we have to imagine, just based on what's going on in the world, that these numbers are pre-COVID numbers, and that we're probably seeing higher numbers across the board right now. Would I be accurate there?
I think that's a great observation, Matt. I think that, any numbers you can see here have to be magnified at this point because of, the simple thing is families often fight at two times, either when, they're, under a lot of stress, or when they're on vacation and they're all stuck in the car together. Well, what's happening now is everybody's stuck together more. So you're going to have more mental health, behavioral issues at this point than you would have at other times, I think. So, I was
just going to say, I mean, I think we all know this. I think it's important to go through just how challenging things are, but I think right now as parents, we're all thinking, okay, so what do we need to do? What do we need to do to combat this, Dale? Where do we go from here? We understand the challenges. Where do we go? There we go.
First of all, the first skill that parents must learn is they have to work as a team. And what's really encouraging to me is I'm working with several families now where the mom and dad have separated or divorced, and they may even have new partners, but they're still working as co-parents. And the research is showing over and over again, co-parenting, even if you're separated, can be really powerful in helping your children cope well. And for parents that are living together, they need to be at work as a team. And the way parents and co-parents can help each other, they can attend meetings together with schools and agencies. They can advocate together and be at meetings where they really have to fight for their children's needs. They can help each other with childcare, taxi driving people or kids around, household responsibilities. And they can work together in implementing behavioral strategies that have been kept up. But this idea of parents working as a team is, to me, the number one parenting skill that can make a difference in helping your children. Another thing, Matt, that I think is really important is that, when you're under enormous distress as parents and families, you got to make really, really healthy decisions around these factors. You have to make sure when you're under distress, it's the number one time you got to start looking at not eating too much junk food, not abusing alcohol or recreational drugs. The Munro drinking rule. I tell this to everybody, if you want to drink no more than 2 or 3 drinks, 2 or 3 nights a week, and never over 3 drinks in one evening. And the drink is like one serving. It isn't like a drink this big. No more than 2 or 3 drinks, 2 or 3 nights a week, and no more than 3 in one night. And I really hit the teenagers with this one and the young adults, but also for parents in general. Again, workaholism. Sometimes parents pour themselves into their job as a way of coping. Or some people mismanage money or even getting into gambling. When you're under pressure, it's not the time to spend a lot of money wastefully. It's a time that you're going to have to really take really good care. So really what I'm saying is The second parenting skill is to show good stress management skills. And the way you do it, you take care of yourself first as a parent. You take care of your partner if you have one secondly. And your kids come third. And a lot of parents say, my kid's got to come first. And I say, no, au contraire. I think that, you have to take care of your own health first. And if you have a partner, your partner second. Because that develops a great foundation for your children so that they can do better no matter what gets thrown at you as a family.
You got to put the mask on yourself if the plane's going down before you worry about your kids or your loved ones beside you.
That's totally true. Put the mask on first, get yourself in good shape, and then you can help the other people. I think physical exercise is really important. The research into the importance. I get every family member and every individual, if they're willing, to do some kind of physical exercise, even if it's a 10 or 15-minute walk every day. And, getting enough sleep is really important for every family member. And, maintaining a good diet, doing some meditative breathing on a regular basis can be very important. And let me show you how to do that. I want everyone in the audience to sit up straight in their chairs. If you feel comfortable, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to breathe in through your nose and into your belly and hold it. I want you to breathe out through your mouth and think the word one, O-N-E. Breathe in through your nose and into your belly and hold it. Blow out through your mouth and think the word one. If I was working with you, I'd have you do that 5 times. 5 breaths in and out. And then I would ask you to open your eyes and you'll feel heavier, more calm, more relaxed. The other thing beyond being mindful and using meditation, I'm not trying to make you into Zen masters. I just want you to capture that moment. And I call it PRN. You hear about PRN medication, like to give someone medication as needed. I call this PRN meditation, where you use meditation. I use it all. I use it 3 or 4 times every day. And I want you to use the breathing as a way of maintaining good stress management. The other thing COVID has brought on for us is we got to darn well have routines that we maintain. You need to get up at a proper time. I'm not just talking about the kids. I want to talk about the adults. Mm-hmm. Get up at a proper time, but also for the teenagers and younger kids. Get up at about the same time. Go to bed about the same time. Keep some physical exercise for a few minutes every day. And, eat about the same time, and keep up a routine going to work, or if you have to work from home, try to, the other thing you can do is even dress up to be in front of the Zoom camera. Do those things that can help you kind of be your old self, even though we're under very, very interesting times right now. And again, use the, Zoom and Skype. Connect with people socially through different virtual methods when you can't hug people. I know I have grandkids and I just love to hug them, but I can't do it. And, it's important if you can't hug is hug through the video. And the way you hug someone is you do it with your eyes the way you look at them, with your voice the way you speak to them, quietly, calmly, lovingly. That you listen. Listening is a really important part of good communication. You listen to what people are saying and you try to maintain a positive frame of mind. And, again, socializing through Zoom isn't perfect, but it's pretty darn good on a regular basis with family.
All right, Dale, I'm going to do a couple things here. First off, I'm going to remind folks about the ability to ask a question, and then I'm going to take a comment that was from there, and that is, I know teamwork it was your number one, but I'd like you, as you are going through these next ones is to consider we have some single parents on the event who are wondering what the impact might be slightly different for them. So if we could just put some stuff into that framework there as well, that would be great. And we're approaching our midway point of this. We got about 5 minutes to the half hour, and I know we're on number 3. We really do want to get through the 12. So I'm going to get out of your way a little bit, but I wanted to give you a bit of a time check as well.
Okay, that's great, Matt. Thank you very much. Again, I'm going to talk about single parents in a few minutes. So if you can hang in there with me, we'll definitely touch base with that. The third parenting skill that is really important is creating at home sensory favorable environments, and hopefully at school, hopefully in work settings. Like we get consultations for adults with autism working in banks and other settings to help them have accommodations that can help them within their environments where they're working. But we're going to talk more about children right now and teens. Elizabeth Bradley, who's a wonderful psychiatrist in Toronto, and one of her colleagues wrote a really good article. And in that, she said that we need to work on an inside-out approach. And as parents, we have to see things and feel things and sense things through the eyes and the feelings of the young people with, the young autistic people, as well as your other children too. Sometimes lights have to be turned down to some degree. Sometimes we need to allow children to rock. I think rocking is really good, actually. It's a good calming kind of. We need to, again, manage aromas around the person. And I think that, not to dwell on this too much, but every person in the family, including the autistic person, should have a private area they can get away to. It can be in the house or the apartment. It can be outside at a nearby park. But people need a place to go to get away from each other. So if you can find private places either in your home or in your nearby environment, it can really make a difference to that person that can't feel crowded and feels too crowded within the family setting. And probably everybody is, but especially the autistic person. Another thing that I want to stress is don't let your thoughts play tricks on you as parents. A lot of times people come to me for counseling and I tell them at the end of the first, and I do this over and over again, you're a lot healthier than you think you are. You're telling me that you're a terrible parent and you're not. I said, I don't believe it, because you're maintaining a job. You're trying to keep your children protected from COVID and bullying and other things. You're managing money relatively well, even when it's tight. I think you've done a pretty darn good job. The other thing I advise parents is don't be jealous of other parents that don't have autistic kids and saying, oh, their life must be so much better than mine. Because you never want to compare your insides with other people's outsides, because those other parents that maybe don't have autistic kids may have other problems, health problems, family problems, and mental health issues that your children don't have. And so don't compare your insides with other people's outsides too much, because we do a little bit all the time, but try not to do that more than you need to. The other thing, a really good book on family therapy said, every family, even the healthiest family, struggles every day. And, I've been married for almost 49 years. And my wife and I have fought every day for 49 years. We get crabby with each other. We let each other have it. Then we're friends again and we have fun again. But, every family fights. Every family has tension. And you can still consider yourself a pretty healthy family, even if those kind of things are happening. We never want our thoughts to play tricks on us. And this is the way our thinking gets distorted. Sometimes we catastrophize. My husband really doesn't get it, or my kids don't. They're just being little animals today, or whatever you say at that moment. And the other thing, don't label yourself as a bad parent when you're probably doing a really, really good job already. I truly believe, after working almost 50 years with over 3,000 families, that parents today are the best parents that the history has ever had at any time, in any place. I see parents that'll drive 3 hours to see me. I see parents that will do anything to help their children. And I'll tell you something, as a person that studied history, this is a time in history where the best parents in the world, and I want to talk to every person that I'm looking at right now, that I truly believe you are a really, really great parent, and you're really working hard to do the right thing. And I want to tell you how much I respect you, and hopefully other people do too. Now, as parents, we're allowed to make 3 dumb decisions a year, okay? So that don't involve violence. So, if you do something kind of dumb, we all do it sometimes as parents. We give a child a cell phone, the next day they lose it. Okay. That's one of those, you knew they probably would and you did it anyway and then they lost it. You give them junk food when you know you really shouldn't. Okay, try not to do that too much, but you're allowed a little bit of leeway this way. I don't expect you to be perfect. And, and sometimes, you may have used video games as a babysitter. And I'm not going to judge you too much on that one, especially in COVID times. Another parenting skill that's really important is to become sexperts. You must learn more about sexuality and gender if you want to, be a really competent parent. This is a very common counseling topic. There's a wonderful rainbow out there of people. I work with several people that are transgender, non-binary. I work with lots of gay young people or adults. I work with people who are asexual. I work, of course, with people that are cis-membered, heterosexual. And so try to, my son said to me one day, if you don't become more sophisticated, he wasn't talking just to me, but people in general, about sexuality and gender, you're obsolete in this world because your kids will be way ahead of you all the time. So please keep that in mind. It's going to come up in your family, and you have to find ways to deal with it in a really, positive and supportive manner. And, I think it's a tough one, but it's important. I'll tell you something. I'm a romantic. I want young people to get married and have love and live together and do all those kind of things as they get older, if it's the right match. And dating websites are really good. Marriage can be very successful for, at least a certain portion of people with autism if they decide to get married. If they have no hope of ever getting married, or they just can't find a partner, or, they and their partner, one of them is really ill or something. Sexual insurance, which is a nice way of saying masturbation, is a very important option for people under certain circumstances. And it is something that I know if you have a certain religious background, it can raise certain anxieties, and I realize that. But it is a very natural part of both young women and young men, and older women and men, for that matter, or non-binary people. And so, I also believe that it's really important for people to know that that's an option. Another thing that's really important is to find ways of managing our expectations as parents. And I think that, if you look at, this is last month's Psychology Today, it talks about being good enough. And one of the articles on don't try to be a perfect parent. It's impossible. Just be a good enough parent. And there's this wonderful social worker that's really famous called Brene Brown. And she talks about being good enough in a lot of ways. But I'll tell you something. I don't want you to be perfect. You'd be so boring if you were perfect. Just be good enough. Try to do the right thing every day. Accept the things you can't change. And if your child, isn't keeping up, they're really bright. They may have a very high intellectual capacity, and they may be failing or dropping out of school. The one thing parents must not do is shame their children. And it's very important that children are not shamed. The other word I want to take out of the English language is the word lazy. It's a very simplistic thing to say to somebody that their child's lazy because they're not working. But if you have mental health issues on top of the autism, some people, even really bright people, will only work at underemployment, part-time employment. Some of them can't work at all because of the severity of their condition. I think that the one thing I do expect is if the child is fairly capable, try to get them doing some kind of part-time job by the time they're 16 years old or so, even if it's cutting a neighbor's lawn for 1 or 2 hours a week. But get them out working, because I deal with PhD students that have autism that have never been employed, and I think it's important that they have employment, even a little bit, to learn to take orders and follow tasks and start to realize of money management at the same time. Jonathan Wise at York University did a presentation that I was really impressed by. And he said that he gave me a book to read called The Psychology of Mattering. And it's on your book list at the end. And The Psychology of Mattering says each one of us has to have a life that matters. We have to do things that matter to other people. If we weren't there, you want to feel like people would miss you. And the one thing I try to do is I try to help everybody that I work with find their place where they can shine. Some people can present really well, be great comedians, be really good in theater. Other people can be very good in mathematics, accounting, being a lawyer, being an accountant, being, university professor. Other people can shine simply because they play, organized hockey, even if it's a house league. That maybe that's an area that they really feel they can shine. Everybody needs to find someplace. Matt, is there anything you want to ask me at this point?
No, but I just want to provide some awareness to you before we get to the end, where I can ask some specific questions. Is the comment I made earlier about some single parents on the line? We're getting some comments and some specific questions regarding challenges that sometimes come from in mixed families, whether it be the multiple parents, maybe some challenges with the child and one of those parents, and with visitations still happening or going to happen in the future. They're looking for some guidance in those regards. And I will assure to everybody on the line that, assuming we have time at the end, I will get into some of those specific questions, but I just wanted to give Dale that heads up there.
Okay, that's good to keep in mind. And I do want to say, in terms of visitation, if it can be resolved through mediation, it is really important that as much as possible you use a non-adversarial way of trying to get visiting. Some parents just don't cooperate. Some parents, you have to work through the law, through the courts with your lawyer to get visitation lined up, because it can be very complicated if it's been a very acrimonious relationship. But in general, if people can learn over periods of time to co-parent, even though they're not living together, it can make a big difference. But I'm not naive to understand that some of you are really struggling with maybe an ex-partner who is not being very, very cooperative or agreeable. Again, we'll touch base a little bit more in a while about that. It is important as a skill for parents to find ways, and for individuals, autistic individuals and their siblings, to find ways to, have escapes, have places to get away to. Also, if you're married to someone who's autistic. And these are some of the ways, that some people really like reading. Some people, I do advise, though, if you like to read, don't make every book you read about autism and being a perfect parent. Try to mix it up so you're reading some novels and some fun things, and not always just, absolutely absorbing yourself in that. For other people, they can, they love sports. They can get involved with a local hockey team. And we do know the Toronto Maple Leafs are the best hockey team in the world. I just want to make that clear right now. But sports is a tremendous uniter for people. And it's a way to kind of escape from the world the way it is. Again, if you have a rich spiritual life, it isn't for everyone. But if you do, it can really be a wonderful way of kind of getting deeper into things and not being feeling so lost. Having a good sense of humor, watching comedies, watching, really funny shows, or laughing with your friends and neighbors can be really important. So I think that that's something that, it can be very, very, very helpful. And again, doing some kind of physical fitness, again, is something. I want to talk about video games for a minute, too. There is a myth out there that video games are terrible for children. And I think it can be if you spend 15 hours every day on your computer playing a video game. That is a problem. But I think there can be some rules set up around video games. And one of them can be schoolwork comes first. If you have a job, if you're married to someone or you have a partner that wants to play video games all the time, there needs to be limits on that too. The person can't hide in the basement all the time playing video games. And, I have kind of a rule, especially during COVID, that 2 hours on the computer, maybe an hour off to do something more physical or read or interact more with people, go out for a walk. But video games can be incredibly therapeutic for people, for young people, even older people. It can be a lot of fun. It can be challenging. It can be social. You can be playing against kids. And since some kids, they don't have any friends wherever in the city they're living or the place they're living. But they have friends in Cincinnati and LA that they're playing video games with. That can be an important part of the social life. If the child is violent, there should be no violent games permitted in the house. But the other thing I know is I'm dealing with a couple of students right now that are in the video game design course at the local college. And they probably will build the whole career in the area of video games, at least for the start of their career. The next thing I want to talk about is parenting and single parents. And I think that it's important that, when you are a single parent and you have all the responsibilities, a lot of them on your shoulders, I think it's really important that, you find ways to strengthen your support network. I think it's important to tap into family and friends and use respite if possible. Some families won't use respite. Respite is very important. Pay your siblings if you can. Play the siblings of the person if you can to be the babysitter. Payment keeps them a little more motivated if you can afford it. You can do favors for other people. You can babysit their kids if possible, and they can babysit your kids sometimes. I know it's a little harder over COVID. And, you can actually, with friends, go out for a cheap date, going out to, for dinner, or at least order out some dinner and having it, even if it's socially distanced outside. And if you are ready for it, and when your marriage is broke up, your relationship, maybe you're not ready, but if you're ready to date, it's one of the questions I ask single parents. Do you think maybe you're ready to date again? And it's something that kind of spurs them on, because therapists can kind of give people permission to do things they wouldn't maybe give them permission to do. If you can get weekends away without the children, that can be helpful. And the other thing that's really important is if you can join on the online support groups, you can join Autism Ontario. If you have a deep faith, keeping in touch with your faith community, it can be very important. And these are all ways that people that are single parents can, and again, try your best to work with the other parent, even if they're not living with you now. But I know in some circumstances you have to use lawyers and more adversarial ways of dealing with those kind of really tough situations. For couples who are married or living together, I really encourage you to kind of remarry and reconnect with your partner. And there's many ways of making love. And we all know kind of the big kahuna, that we all talk about. That's out of Beach Blanket Bingo back in 1956. But we know about, kind of the usual way we talk about making love. But there's other ways that can be incredibly sexy. And they can be ways that you can, really maintain your relationship. The one thing I know, if you're exhausted, and this applies also to single parents if they have children or other people living in the house, but if you're exhausted, giving each other a really, really warm hug several times a day if necessary is one of the most wonderful ways of making love in the world. I think that, I think the importance of kind words to each other. If you've ever read the book, The 5 Love Languages, and it's in your reading list, it talks about all the ways that you can, show love and build love within your partner and within yourself. And the other thing that can be the sexiest thing in the world is to say something kind to your partner, or the people you really love, because it can be, one of those things, or just doing something for someone, making supper when the other person usually makes supper can just take the load. It can be one of the sexiest things you can do. And I do want you to be sexy. And if you're a single parent, I still want you to be sexy. I'm still a romantic and like to think that maybe there's somebody out there for you when you're ready.
So we're moving along well, Dale, and I didn't want to interrupt that because I think that that point is one I know that you did want to make. We got about just under 15 minutes to go, and I know that we're on number 9 here, but I wanted to give you that warning. A reminder to our audience: continue to submit your questions in the Ask Question box below us, and make sure if you do need to leave and we're still going or the like, that you check out the handout section where there's a lot of very, very useful content. Okay, number 9, setting healthy boundaries. Talk to us about that.
Sorry, I just have something coming up on my screen. There we go. Whoops, I've just lost my screen. There we go. I'm back at it.
All right.
One of the things about boundary setting is this is one of my favorite cartoons of all time. And it's about a woman building a brick wall between herself and this guy. And she says, because my therapist says I need to work on establishing my boundaries. And I think sometimes we've got to build brick walls between ourselves and other people. I do not believe Christmas, Ramadan, all the different celebrations every year, everybody should get together. Some of the happiest Christmases are when I haven't gotten together with some relatives. You have a perfect right not to get together with people if they hurt you, if they say mean things, if they judge you as a parent. I would like to encourage you to not get together with those people around major celebrations or on a regular basis. And if you do, make it really short visits, because nobody needs to be put down. And some family members can be incredibly negative towards you. I think that keeping your confidential material private, you don't have to tell everybody about the history of your children or your mental health issues or anything else. Just tell them to the key people that maybe need to know that. Teachers at school don't need to hear that. You need to keep some privacy between yourself and some of the teachers sometimes. Sometimes you might want to go on a vacation without the children if you can. Right now, nobody's going on vacation, but eventually. I want to suggest sometimes don't stay on boards of directors of organizations for years if it's killing you. Get off after a while. And again, find ways with your kids to, sometimes turn off, turn off the technology as much as possible. And a way of loosening your boundaries, which is sometimes necessary, is, going out for a walk or a drive without your partner or your other family members. Way of loosening, maybe the parent wants to return to work after being at home. Maybe they need to join a fitness club. Now, right now you can't do it, but eventually I know you can. And so, and again, joining a support group that maybe you weren't, when you feel really, really isolated. Another skill that's really important is, igniting your spirit. If you're a person that does have a faith group, the research shows that for those people, they can draw great strength and motivation from their faith. Now, I know some people don't have a faith and they just resent different faith groups, and I realize that. But there's other ways of, igniting your spirit. Surround yourself with positive, fun, safe people among your family members. Again, don't get together with everybody if they drive you crazy. Among the friends that are positive, fun, and safe. And, professionals, don't hang out. Don't keep giving business to a therapist or any other professional if you don't feel they're positive, fun, and safe to be around. You have to leave. Different professionals have to have, unlimited flattery just short of being annoying. Unlimited sense of humor. Unlimited sense of commitment. They have to be that way. And you have to feel safe and positive and realize that person is a real person with actually a sense of humor. You need a cheering section to survive in this world. And again, you can use meditation with the breathing. And this is just an outline of how I encourage people to practice meditative breathing. About 5 times, takes about 45 seconds whenever you're feeling under stress, or before you go to bed, just to get yourself in a better frame of mind. Another thing that's really important is to watch for little miracles to happen. And, Sarah McLachlan talks about just another ordinary miracle today. Miracles happen every day in families. One family, I brought this up at a presentation. She said, my son finally got a part-time job and I didn't think he'd ever work anywhere. And actually now, many years later, he's working full-time. Finding the right professional, even if you've run into some duds, that can be life-giving to you. Finding a cause such as helping people with autism or some other cause, women's issues or something else, can give you a sense of coping that you might not otherwise have. And I think that the one miracle that happens from having autistic children and children in general is that after a while you end up with an authentic sense of success. The really successful people aren't the people with the big cars and the big homes with the big jobs. The really, successful people, parents, are the people that have an authentic sense of what success really is in terms of, love and membership in groups in your family. That's what success really is in my definition. I think that one of the things the joy of parenthood. People say shouldn't have kids. I don't believe with that. I don't believe necessarily for some. I don't agree with that for at least some parents. I think the joy of parenting is helping your children overcome obstacles you never thought they'd ever get over, and they finally do it. And it's like winning the Stanley Cup or getting $1 million. It's just the best feeling in the world. And a final skill I want to emphasize to people is to, if you need it, go for individual or couple or family therapy. And, I have the joy of doing all 3 in my work. Right now, I'm working totally virtually. Every therapist almost in Ontario is either using video or phone right now for therapy because of COVID-19. But I've done over 600 interviews now in the last year, and it works actually quite well. So I hope, if you can reach out to therapists in your community, I think it can be very helpful. The 1-minute rule. If there's extreme anger coming up in your family and people are getting enraged, I humbly call it the Munro rule. the rule is if the argument and the hard feelings are lasting over 60 seconds, get totally away from each other. Nobody's allowed to follow the other person. Everybody should quit talking at that point because nobody's listening anyway, and get totally away from each other. Go to a different part of the house. What I do in my family, I just go out for a walk. I just get the heck out of the house for 10 minutes. And usually when I come back, I feel like a much better human being. But this is something, if it's really serious anger, you really do need some treatment, some kind of professional treatment, which I won't go into today because it'd be much more comprehensive. And again, learn to speak more quietly, more slowly, more calmly, more succinctly, and maintain a positive frame of mind. I try to teach parents this because kids model after their parents. I also try to treat young people with autism or brothers and sisters to do the same thing. But parents can model this behavior, and kids over time will start to follow it. And if you do this, kids will listen to you more. But if your voice rises, as I said earlier, it's not going to work. And if you have family gatherings like Christmas, Ramadan, whenever, every family member should take 5 minutes talking to the autistic person about their special interests, especially if they sit over in the corner and nobody's spending any time with them. And I want you, if they like My Little Pony, even though they're a 25-year-old guy, talk to them about Brony. If they like sports or history or video games, or they like facts about all the washing machines ever invented in history, then talk to them. Everybody in that gathering should spend at least 5 minutes with the person so they don't feel isolated, because they can feel really rejected at family gatherings. And if you're advocate for your children with schools and agencies and governments in a way that you don't totally exhaust yourself. If you find you're totally exhausted and you're not getting any results, you may have to take a month off and just gather yourself, go for some professional help if you're really frustrated, but make darn sure, because you're not going to get many results if you're so fried. You want to make sure, and that one of the articles that's attached is an article I published 3 years ago on how to fight the system and still maintain your own health at the same time. So please turn to that if you can find it. And it should be in French and English, all the handouts today.
Yeah, so all those handouts are available in the handout section. When you open it, you may need to expand it just a little bit to get at all of those. We've only got a couple minutes left in our scheduled time. We're going to go a little bit over today, I do believe, and I wanted to take some of the time before the top of the hour where many of you got to get to whatever you got to get to next to get some of your questions answered. So Dale, if you don't mind, we're going to divert to some audience questions, and I'm going to give you some time after this to sort of wrap things up. The first question that I have is, I have a current partner, an ex-husband, father to my son with autism, who do not get along. What is the one advice you would to deal with these two men who don't get along, and for the sake of working together to achieve the best consistency for parenting of our son?
If the partner can talk to his or her ex and try to find a way to even have short visits, like even 15-minute drop in, say hi, and leave as a starting point. And maybe with time, maybe go out for walks so you're outside and you can even be distant but be together. Or find ways on small levels. I think that can be helpful. I think one of the parents has to be the adult in terms of really dealing with the anger if possible. And it's important for the young person, again, to learn to speak more, the person with autism or other children, to speak more quietly, more calmly. But it's really important. But these are very complex situations, and you need to put that in perspective. It may take years to really make things better, but if you can get little starts where people spend even brief periods of time together and maybe increase that, And if the one parent or the other parent can actually can talk about the things that their child really enjoys. You know, it could be video games, it could be hockey, it could be certain foods they like, you know, but find something that they can share in common that maybe can start a conversation. But some of these situations are very complex, and I don't want to pretend that it's going to get resolved very quickly.
Another question is about a very specific issue. You've given 12 secrets, 12 tactics here. But what advice, where do you think a parent should focus who have, especially now during COVID, no partners or supports? She's a widow without any partners on family support and is, you know, experiencing a lot of the issues that we've been talking about here.
I think that first of all, try to connect with people by phone and by Zoom or Skype. I think it's important that maybe, you know, you try to find safe people that you can quarantine with, and or, you know, if there's even another couple or another person that you both quarantine for 2 weeks, cover that, you're both safe, then get together. I think people need to find at least one or two people to connect with, but it's a very isolating time, and I don't want to underestimate how difficult that can be for a person. But I think try to find one or two other people that you can connect with by Zoom, Skype, and even together, or go to parks, social distance, go for a walk. Even though you're social distance, you might be wearing a mask, and get together with people that way. But it can be very, very difficult, and I sympathize with this person very much.
Do you have any insights into where our audience might be able to find some help for siblings, like sibling support groups or the like?
I think the best connection would be through Autism Ontario. I think the other thing would be some of the agencies, like in London, Thames Valley Children's Centre might be a connection that could tell you where things like that are. We used to have SIB shops, and SIB shops were set up for brothers and sisters of people with autism. And that seems to have kind of gone into the background in recent years. But I would like to see SIB shops started up again, because they were very helpful for brothers and sisters to understand their autistic member of the family. And it was really growth expanding for each one of the brothers and sisters. So, you know, that would be something. And if you can even connect the siblings with other siblings of kids with autism, that would be another way. Even if it's just one-on-one for a very, you know, that way, I think that could be helpful too. But it's a good question.
And there's some more questions about this, about the challenges related to two family homes or split homes with co-parenting and the like. It sounds like it might be something that we should maybe even look into doing an entire webinar on. Some of those are more complex, Dale. I'm going to make sure that you get copies of those questions so that you might be able to maybe write out some answers, because I think that, you know, with the time that we have left, diving into any of them might be a little challenging for us. What I am going to do now is I'm going to throw it back to you to let you sort of wrap this up. For those of you that need to leave now, we're going to go about another 5 minutes. We've got this archive will be available on demand, and it'll be on the Autism Ontario website as of tomorrow. So you can go ahead and check out what you missed. All right, Dale, I'm going to give you a few minutes to sort of wrap things up here before I come back on.
Okay, first of all, thank you everyone for being here today. And I want to say that in conclusion, if you ask the question, what makes a good parent? Some psychological, research that covered a meta, analysis of many, many different studies showed this. The number one thing you need as a parent is to show love and physical affection and acceptance and quality time. And I think most parents do that to a fairly large degree. I think that's kind of a no-brainer for most parents. The second skill, these are in order of importance. The second skill was that individual parent or each individual parent does really good stress management with themselves. That means, doing yoga, meditative breathing on a regular basis, watching their diet, focus on more positive ways of thinking about things, doing all those things that, managing your money properly, all those things can be important. The third issue that was part of the third parenting skill that was essential is that you try to maintain or develop a healthy relationship with your partner, or if you're separated, your co-partner. And that, again, the parents that do that, I had a meeting last year where I had 4 mothers in the meeting, and it was amazing how well they worked together, even though people had separated and reconnected. And so healthy relationships with the co-partner or the partner can be very important. It's number 3. The next one was parents that encourage self-sufficiency in their children, autistic children and other children. That was an important skill. Behavioral strategies were actually number 7. And when they looked at positive behavioral strategies in terms of parenting skills, they weren't, they're still really important. And we have a lot of ABA and IBI out there that's really important. But these other qualities came first in terms of the meta-analysis. And I think we need to encourage those if we want to do well. So, in conclusion, I want to say to you, COVID-19 will end. It definitely will end. This will not go on forever. It is really tough right now, but it will end. Secondly of all, the parents that are in my office and the family members are unsung heroes in my mind. And there is greatness out there among you. There is great people out here watching this video right now. And you know something? You show great courage, great perseverance, and great parents and family members like you make professionals like me love our work. And I do love my work. And I love the people that come in there. I know other professionals do too. So to end, I want you to hug everybody around you, at least with your eyes and your voice and your listening and your positive frame of mind. I want to thank you very much. And Matt, thank you very much. And Autism Ontario, I appreciate this very much. And it's been a real pleasure being here today.
Thank you so much, Dale. I know I got a lot out of the presentation as a parent, and I'm sure our audience did as well. As I mentioned, when you get a chance to get all of your questions answered, I'm going to get those over to Dale after here to hopefully be able to get you some answers. This entire presentation will be recorded, available on the Autism Ontario website as of tomorrow. Before you leave, make sure you go to the handout section, expand it, and download all of those great resources. And with that, I want to thank you for your time and want to say that we look forward to seeing you on our next Autism Ontario event.